Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. We're just going to wait about 2 more minutes until we get the last of our attendees logged in. So if you don't mind, we'll just wait a few more minutes until the last of our attendees log in. Generally, people are running 1 or 2 minutes behind, so if you'll just bear with us. Today's webinar is called Using Digital Technology to Fill Your Critical Roles Now. With us as speaker is Lindsay Stanton. Lindsay is the director of DigiMe in the United States. The purpose of this webinar is to teach and advise companies on how to use digital technology and video technology in particular to help them attract more employees and hire more efficiently. So again, we'll just wait 1 or 2 minutes until the final people log in, and then we will start. Now, just some brief housekeeping. On the right-hand side lower part of your screen, there's a chat box so that you can ask any questions throughout the presentation. Your questions will be answered at the end of the presentation by Lindsay. There's also the ability to raise your hand throughout the presentation. You'll see a little hand screen on yours on the bottom part of your computer. So again, we'll just wait 1 or 2 more minutes until we get the last people logged in. There's 41 registered attendees for this event today, so we're hoping that at least 10 or 20% of them should log in. So bear with us just 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we will. Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Dr. Tristan Evans. I'm taking over for Ron Nolasco today as everyone in our office has come down with COVID, unfortunately, except myself and two staff, but everyone else has disappeared. So my name is Dr. Evans. I'm taking over for Ron. With us today is Mrs. Lindsay Stanton. Lindsay is the director of DigiMe in the United States. Our topic for presentation today is using digital technology to fill your critical roles now. The learning outcomes of this presentation are to teach you how to leverage social and digital to hire more efficiently, to understand global case studies on finding ways to fill your critical employee roles and how video technology can help, the SEO data and impact on hiring, and learning impact of video versus text. So without further ado, I we'll allow Ms. Stanton to take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. And I have to say, I'm laughing with that introduction because definitely with everything COVID related, digital has become more and more pressing of a topic and a need for organizations. So it's ironic that that was the lead in. I am going to share my screen. It's saying that you're sharing your screen so that I can't.
That's odd. Okay, hang on. Let me see. Here we go. Now see if you can.
Okay. Are you able?
We can't see your screen and you've muted yourself, so we're not quite there yet. Click unmute on your...
I didn't actually click mute.
that's weird. Okay, try sharing your screen again. It'll
Okay.
up will pop a little permission button on your screen to share it. I think you have to turn off video. So that's better. Now click the share screen. And it will say choose what you share, and Run the World wants to share the contents of your screen.
Yeah, it's not working for some reason. It worked during the test too.
Okay. Perhaps you can log out and log back in, and I will entertain everyone.
They said that you would be able to share my screen, no?
I cannot.
Because you have my presentation?
I cannot share your screen because I don't have the presentation on my side.
I had sent it over.
My colleague Ron might have it, but unfortunately he was sick today, so I got roped in at the last minute. Oh, there we go. It looks like something is loading on your side. Okay, nope, she's disappeared and she'll come back in a second. Sorry about that, everyone. Technical difficulties. Right, so I apologize for that. We'll wait until Ms. Stanton logs back in again, and here she is. Okay, now if you can try and share your screen.
Okay.
Do you see a pop-up? There we go.
Yay. Okay.
There
is that
good? That's it. Everyone.
Okay.
I will mute. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to type them on the right-hand side of your screen. Ms. Stanton will answer them toward the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'll let you take.
Perfect. So just to give a little bit of background on myself, as Tristan mentioned, I am the president of DigiMe. I sit on our board of directors as well. Just to give a little insight into my role, I work with our strategic partners largely in global staffing, global outsourcing, and we work with quite a few Fortune 500s on a global scale as well. I also have the pleasure of sitting on the Leadership Council for the American Staffing Association, their Women in Leadership group, which I'm now on my third year being invited to be on that committee, which they always have several thousand people apply for that, and only about a little less than 100 of us get accepted. So that is definitely the context at which I'm presenting to you today. So hopefully be able to provide you guys some really great takeaways. Obviously, we are in extremely challenging times from a hiring perspective when Starbucks and McDonald's are shutting down locations because they can't staff. There's an issue. I had the pleasure yesterday actually of sitting in on kind of the annual kickoff for the American Staffing Association with the president of ASA and for those of us that are volunteers, and they were talking about what we have all kind of termed the Great Resignation, but it was very interesting. They were talking about a lot of tools that the staffing industry is using to help overcome some of those challenges. And what I've definitely noticed since being in the space, which I started in this space in 2008, there is certainly a kind of natural progression of trends. Things typically will start out in staffing first and then trickle down to direct employers. So hopefully you'll find the information that's shared today to be extremely relevant to your business and your recruiting practice, because at the end of the day, I think all organizations on a global scale are definitely understanding now that having people is absolutely critical to keeping the engine running for their organization. And digital is definitely where it's at. So we're going to talk today about how you can leverage video to help attract the right job seekers faster, easier, and at less cost. With digital solutions, how you can track your efforts smarter so that you can re-hit the ones that are working and then migrate away from the ones obviously that are not. And also reach a more diverse talent pool and more strategic talent pool through the way that you're formulating your job postings and the tools that you're using to reach people through those postings. So we've certainly seen marketing over the last several years really trend towards digital. All things have become video related, especially as we've migrated to so much remote workforce. We've seen organizations have to pivot. I know that's been such a hugely overused term the last now 2 years, but it is really the case. We've seen industries that we never would have expected to go virtual, being forced to do so. And that has impacted all areas of business, including recruiting. So I think there actually are some really beneficial tools that can make the fact that you're remote actually easier to recruit for the right talent. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is really opening up your reach and allowing those kind of endless possibilities to actually help you get a more targeted and relevant talent pool to you. Because when you're using the right tools and understanding the right data, then you can really strategically make sure that you're reaching the correct talent through those tools. And one of the nice things about technology is it definitely is allowing us to understand trends and behavior like never before. I know when I started in the industry in 2008, using data to recruit, just coming off of the downturn in the economy, was super relevant because everything had to be proven. We're kind of seeing a return to that, but for different reasons. The reasons now obviously are the importance of being able to find the people, because they're hiding, or they're either gainfully employed or they're not actually looking for employment. So and part of that has been largely driven by COVID, obviously. So one of the things that we're definitely seeing organizations on a global scale do to help overcome some of the challenges is really information-based and education. So on all levels, which I'm going to go into detail on, being able to kind of showcase to employees the work environment, the way you work, and the safety related to that work environment is really important. And being able to educate potential candidates, employees on what you're doing to make it a good, positive work environment, not even just COVID related, but, related to your company culture, the people that you attract, why they would even want to consider working there to begin with. I think so much of recruiting previous to COVID was very reactive. Organizations might not have had a completely comprehensive way of a strategy around recruiting that would be consistent with how you would market your business, say, for example, from a brand and product perspective. But now what we're seeing is, and I really think it's here to stay, more comprehensive look at how you are recruiting, retaining, and maintaining those relationships with your employees and your talent, because having that pipeline, whether it's existing employees that you're helping, raise up through the organization, or making sure you're reaching the right talent pools, fostering those relationships is super important, and having those resources. So even the people that you don't hire today, that maybe aren't a good fit today for positions, keeping them engaged, understanding that the majority of organizations are in some way consumer facing. So building that rapport and having them understand your story is super important, even if you don't necessarily hire them for a position. So we're overall seeing education and information at the forefront of strategy on how organizations are recruiting and just building a database to recruit from. And a lot of this information relates back to the way people need to understand information. So global organizations have definitely struggled the last few years, particularly. We saw it start to come about pre-pandemic, but it has just absolutely increased since COVID. But the issue of ghosting and candidates, even if they were hired for a position or offered a position, no showing on the first day, or even maybe coming for a week to a position and then not showing up the second week, or ghosting through the interview process at various stages of the process, losing those candidates, those valuable candidates or new hires that you worked so hard and spent so much money to get into the pipeline. So one of the things that we've definitely seen organizations do really successfully is providing information to candidates to help overcome the challenges that lead to ghosting to begin with. So I know a lot of companies, and particularly HR departments, don't really necessarily do that effective of a job of communicating the steps in the process, and the candidates are oftentimes left in the dark as a result. So they have no idea that it might take your recruiting department, for example, 4 to 6 weeks to even sort through resumes and understand who they even want to bring in for an interview. The candidates do not know what your process looks like. It's not intuitive to them. I actually was just reading an article about how there's such a challenge with age-related discrimination, involuntarily discrimination against people over 50 who are looking for positions but don't even know where to start. So I think just looking at the candidate experience from a different perspective and kind of stepping back from your organization and understanding that the way that you recruit might not be intuitive to the candidate, and the process that you're using might not be intuitive to the candidate. So it's always way better to over share information and oversell your story and showcase what the process is going to look like, who you are as a company, versus leaving them guessing or assuming that they know things. So I know the whole industry as a whole has definitely kind of step back and taken a look at the processes that we have in place, and have definitely shifted a lot of how we're doing things and communicating information. And it does not need to be a huge lift for your recruiting departments, but it has absolutely amazing results. And we've seen it, we've tracked it for the organizations that we work with, and just the companies I have exposure to with my relationships in the space in general. So when you think about, Maslow's motivation of needs, like thinking about the fact that, changing a job or getting a new job is and can be a scary thing. That's a big shift in somebody's life. So what are you doing to help ease that anxiety, and kind of letting them know what your work environment is like, not only from a health and safety perspective, but what opportunities do they have to network, build community, raise up their career, have growth within the organization? What opportunities do you have for their future, even if it is like an hourly role? Just showing what the work environment looks like and helping them feel like they are confident in making the move and they understand the process, because in this case, particularly, definitely knowledge is power. So the one thing that I suggest is, people's behavior, it tends to, they tend to get a little nervous when they're making a major life shift at every kind of critical time in their career path. So oversharing information about your process is a really, really good idea. We've seen organizations build content, not even just around company culture, but building out digital content that's going to help them understand what your recruiting process looks like, how long it takes for you to review candidates, what are the steps along the way, and then delivering short video snippets along that pathway. So allowing the candidates to see and have insight into your process flow before it's maybe even relevant to them, before they even apply for a position. But certainly post application, you want to keep them engaged and do things to keep them warm, like send them a short, and it doesn't have to be long or involved, but a short 30-second video on what to expect next. And then as they progress through the pathway, keep them informed, keep them engaged. So send them another 30, 45-second video on, what their first day would look like, or what the work environment's going to look like. If you've got field positions versus corporate, making sure that you're showing the nuances of those different environments specific to what that candidate applied for, or that new hire has signed up for. So definitely keeping consistency can help eliminate a lot of that anxiety and fear that can occur from a lack of knowledge and just making a major life shift, like changing their job. And we've definitely seen that, obviously there are so many job openings in so many different fields right now, but particularly anything in transportation, logistics, healthcare. We've all seen the ramp in restaurant hospitality as things have somewhat returned back to a little bit of normal. But again, this is just another opportunity to reach people in different ways, in more global ways, in more social ways. We track a lot of the trends around digital behavior in general, and one of the nice things about it is, you can hugely increase the amount of footprint. So, like, our global clients will be reaching candidates in 30 different countries, if that's, what their initiative is. So understanding from a global scale, like how you're reaching people, and also leveraging the fact that you can reach and access people on such a huge scale, especially with a socially and mobilely enabled digital footprint, to educate them on what those safety measures are that you've put in place, especially if you're, in a field that requires, a little bit more closer proximity for the employees. So let's talk a little bit deeper about how to use video to recruit specifically. So definitely some of the questions we typically get asked by organizations are like, how do you even start? And it does not have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be a huge undertaking. We work with companies that kind of span the gamut from having access to a lot of content to those that have none. But one thing to note is most job descriptions have a lot of repetition in the critical requirements, and they're not necessarily that compelling or do that great of a job of selling your story. So your end game really with creating a video job description should be to communicate the critical information about that role and give them insight into who you are as a company. So what we see really good representations of video job descriptions having in them is a couple different elements. So number one, you don't want to go too long. You definitely want to be somewhere between that 30 and 60-second mark. We track data on a global scale, and we definitely see that when an organization's logo pops up on the screen, which is typically the last few seconds of a video job, that's kind of typically when the candidates will either exit or execute the apply call to action. So shorter is better. If you're hiring for positions in industries like, for example, restaurant hospitality, where it might be, you might not need as much information about the position communicated, you can shrink that down to 30 seconds. There's a really tight correlation between video and social, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. But for that reason, again, kind of that shorter length is really important. And we also see candidates respond best to video job descriptions that communicate information about your company on the front and the back end. So I view it kind of as a recruitment sandwich in regards to the video. So the front end of the video is a little bit about you, why they should even consider why you'd be a good employer to begin with or a great employer to begin with. And then the core information about the job itself, and then finish off with some information about your company. We see companies do a really nice job of like tying back, initiatives for like charitable contributions and things that their organization participate in. That's a great way to close a video out. So think about what's going to really sell your organization to a job seeker, not just the job itself, but kind of including a little bit of information in there about the company and giving the job seeker some insight. If you have content that you can leverage to do the creative, that's great. We see organizations kind of with all extremes, those that have in-house production capabilities and those who, might just use an iPhone to show like their manufacturing facilities or their work environments, or do an interview with a hiring manager. So just know that the global data that we're tracking definitely shows that candidates are just excited to engage with video in general. It's definitely a way to totally differentiate yourself. It's such a small percentage of what represents overall job openings right now. So in a time where, reaching people in a new and different way is absolutely critical, this is a real game changer to help you kind of shine and stand out from any of your quote unquote competitors from a recruiting perspective. So whether you have, highly produced, curated content, or, it's a little more Blair Witchy, regardless of what end of the spectrum you're on, just know that the candidates would prefer to see that content in video anyway. So even if you have to pull from like your marketing and communications department to grab some content related to your brand, like that's a great starting point. We often work with organizations, brand guidelines, and content that they might want to send our way, but there's always great ways to fill in any gaps in content that you might have to. And then just know that kind of that the clearer and simpler that your messaging is, the better. Not giving too much information, especially in a day and age where you're really kind of looking to pull those people in, kind of a hook, if you will, to get them interested in your company and your job openings. Plus, it's always better to get them to register if you're linking your jobs back to either an applicant tracking system software or a CRM tool, so that you've got their information. Like I mentioned at the very beginning, being able to have their contact information where you can engage them in the future is also really great too, because even if you don't hire them today, you might want them down the road.
Conduit.
And then obviously we see organizations, using videos in a variety of languages. I would say one kind of common use case for global recruiting is doing subtitles of the native language when you're working outside of the US, for example, and then having the actual voiceover about the position run in English. But we typically, if we're working with organizations hiring on a global scale, they'll generally utilize British talent when they're working outside the US, and then do native language subtitles. Subtitles are great in general, even just doing work in the US or your country of origin. That's a really great way to highlight information and also assist from a compliance perspective. Also opportunity to put like critical bullets, things you really want people to see. I would say though that reiterating it in the voiceover is really important, because when people are watching and listening to a video versus, I always say, quote unquote, reading text posting about a position, because people don't read much content at all anymore. But when they're listening and watching a video, they actually learn and retain 70% more information that's communicated to them. So that translates to you getting better qualified candidates, because they now understand 70% more of the qualifications you communicated to them in a digital way versus a long text job posting. A couple other things that are really important to note about video in general, whether you're talking about, your video job descriptions or communicating your culture, again, to, try to get people to sign up to join a database or CRM tool for, for recruitment later, for example. There's a huge correlation between video, social, and mobile. So just a couple important stats on this. We see the data shows that Facebook gets over 4 billion video views daily, with 65% of them coming through mobile. Twitter gets 2 billion video views a day, and the multiplier on engagement with video is 10x. So that's obviously huge. And people are 6 times more likely to retweet a video message versus text. So when you think about the organic power that you create for your organization recruiting in a video format, it's huge. And then when you layer on top of that the SEO boost, it's even more significant. So video is recognized by Google and the other engines as priority content. If it's mobile enabled video content, you're going to get even higher lift. So that's a 53 times higher lift. So that means when candidates are typing in keywords that might be related to your job openings or even your hiring markets, they're going to be more likely to come up with your jobs versus your competitors if you're representing them in video. We're also seeing more and more organizations utilize tools like social. Obviously, Facebook groups are huge. We see Facebook groups translate extremely well across our customer base, all job types, all job levels. But we're also getting more and more conversations with clients and partners in regards to sites like TikTok and being able to use those types of tools to reach people. TikTok is really interesting because obviously, again, you would need to make sure your video is more of a hook because it has to be shorter content for TikTok. But the global reach on TikTok is extremely high. They reach on average 155 countries, and they're achieving about 1 billion video views a day. So again, very significant. And one of the things that we do for the organizations that we work with is really track trends around candidate behavior from a social perspective, since social does tend to drive the most organic traffic for organizations' jobs. Candidates are always willing to share on social. And we actually see, like with bilingual positions in the United States, it's even higher than English only positions, but typically about 60% of the applicant flow coming in through the video jobs is actually through social sharing. So that's organic, that's not pay-per-click, which is pretty exciting, because then the organizations are not only getting a deeper, more relevant reach to their job openings, but they're able to understand where they should be focusing their efforts from a social perspective, because I do know that for a lot of companies, like social can get a little overwhelming, like they're not really sure where to start. And with pay-per-click campaigns, you can end up spending a lot against it, and maybe, being a little unclear as to ROI. So, being able to really track what social trends are developing, where things are moving, and being able to stay ahead of that. And that's one of the reasons I mentioned at the very beginning that a lot of times, like organizations will, if they're recruiting in a very savvy way, like taking a look at some of the tools that the staffing industry and the outsourcing industry are using, and mirroring those. One of the things I thought was really interesting in yesterday's meeting with the American Staffing Association is they're talking about, obviously, the what's been termed the Great Resignation, but then there was a full-blown discussion about the Great Automation as a follow-up to that. And we're definitely seeing this with organizations. They're becoming more and more savvy about the automated tools that they're using to attract talent and also move them through their systems. So doing things like linking a video job description to an AI screening tool, for example, can be a really great strategy. Using automated calendar bookings, there's simple things that you can do to, again, like step back, look at the candidate process, and make it as painless as possible, especially thinking about, when we look at the data and see how much traffic is coming through social and mobile, people's ability or willingness to fill out extensive forms on either one, either through social or especially if they're coming in from social from a mobile device, they're not going to be willing to fill out something really lengthy and put in a lot of personal data. So thinking about that in your practice and making sure that you're accommodating that audience that you're trying so desperately to reach as a result of that. So, and then adding on layers of automation that can assist with that. So just some data points on the next few slides in regards to impact by industry of utilizing video tools in the healthcare industry. We've definitely seen a strong trend in communicating about more like company culture in addition to the jobs themselves. But this is definitely an industry where reaching hidden pockets of talent, as we look at the fact that there just are not enough nurses to fill the positions that are open. So being able to reach those people strategically where they already are is absolutely critical to achieving the types of fill rates that organizations need to achieve to keep their businesses functioning. So just going to walk you through a few different data points. And it's interesting, like Facebook groups tend to be a really strong performer for digital ads. Most organizations will embed the videos into like their career site or applicant tracking system to start with. But as I mentioned, the organic behavior tends to really pick up from there. And that's driven in part by the SEO. So the SEO is actually really quick to kick in. We definitely see organizations, seeing an impact on the SEO associated with their jobs when they initiate videos in as few as like a week or two. So it does happen quickly. And then the organic sharing on the candidate's part definitely picks up as well. If you're using pay-per-click tools, obviously that just helps get broader exposure that the videos can be shared off of, but it's not even necessarily, something you have to do. And for social, you don't even have to necessarily be posting specifically to social sites. If you have your organization has a social presence and you're able to use that presence specifically to educate and recruit about your positions and your company culture, obviously that's an added benefit, but just know the candidates are going to do a lot of that lift for you if your video is short, compelling, and easy for them to share. And then be able to track trends around behavior. So understanding where you're sourcing the candidates from, what social sites are working the best, analyzing data and respond to it around the time of day that candidates are viewing the video and when they're actually converting. So I know some of the staffing firms that we partner with have changed like when they're calling on candidates as a result of what the data is showing them. So taking a look at that data and being willing to change some of the recruiting practices within your organization based on what the candidates are basically trying to tell you through the data. And then understanding geographical reach. And sometimes this can surprise you. Sometimes people are willing to commute from a large geographical area. If it's a virtual or remote position, you might be having really high conversion or tapping into talent pools in geographical areas that you wouldn't have expected. But this is another way where the SEO can play in your favor, as well as that organic, deeper reach, that fast multiplier on reach to the candidates, because you might be able to tap into a whole new audience, and then you can be strategic about it. So if the data is showing you that you're getting people from a certain location that you had not previously identified, you can start to tag in those meta tags and keywords to your videos so that you're proactively sourcing from those markets and then strategically reaching people through, like location-based ads on Craigslist, for example, or a lot of social groups like Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups are location-specific. So leveraging that as well and being able to maximize that reach. We also see just in general, kind of as a little bit of a side note, but I think it's important that being specific and intentional about your locations is important, even if it is a virtual position or, you don't really care if what location they're in. It just has to be a major market, for example. It's still very beneficial to identify some hiring markets and target those in your approach and your reach, because candidates largely will do a location-based search when they're looking for a new position. So that's really important, and it can start to build your data story too. So even if you are, just looking nationally or it is virtual, we recommend that you pinpoint at least a few markets to at least get the ball rolling, and then let the data show you like where you might need to multiply those positions across, and just identify in the video like key hiring markets, even just from a meta tag or keyword perspective, so that you're marrying up with the right people that are looking for the job. And then understanding things like time of day of the week, source of applies, where you're getting the best conversion, when you're getting the best conversion, because you might want to adjust, when you're posting your jobs out based on what the data is telling you. There are definitely some trends that we see across industry, across job types and titles. I would tell you that the weekends are like one of the worst times to post a job, for example. Weekends, even a little bit the holidays. You want to hit people actually while they're at work. Surprisingly, that's what the data shows. Tuesdays and Thursdays overall tend to be the best days to attract talent, and it is within the work window. So like from 9 to 5, and usually like mid-morning, mid-afternoon tend to track the highest conversion. I always kind of say my theory on that is that it's like the beginning of the workday when people are frustrated, or the end of the workday when they're frustrated, and it's the beginning of the week when, maybe like, their frustrating boss is like really getting on their nerves, or the end of the work week when they just can't think about returning to that place on Monday. So those are key opportunities for you to reach people and get their attention because they are more likely to respond to your openings. So again, just kind of go through some of the tools that we would recommend looking at, and kind of what the data is showing you. You can definitely use digital technology to help lessen your manual workload. Requires a lot less manual postings, for example. You can build a lot more automation into your postings. It doesn't have to be painful to do the video creation. It doesn't have to be time consuming or expensive. If you're using the right tools, you can do it in 48 hours or less. And the one thing that the data is surprisingly showing us, as I kind of alluded to earlier, is the content is way less important than just having the video message to begin with. So don't worry about creating, the next Steven Spielberg production. Having any type of video content is better than having none at all. Because the candidates are responding to those digital assets in a very positive way. And then looking at how you can layer onto your videos to help streamline your process, and link to like AI tools, any type of online assessment, video interviewing, even like telephone screening technologies, calendar technologies, virtual events, virtual and video-based job fairs can be super beneficial, because then you can literally screen somebody seconds after you've attracted them in. Like one of the things I really recommend is walking through your process and think about like, what would you be willing to do as a candidate, and what would your expectations be as a candidate, especially thinking about the digital world that we live in, and how fast people click in and out of information and content in general. Definitely something to keep in consideration for your recruiting practice. And then social sharing is huge. I mentioned this a lot, but, that's a great way to reach people. There's a reason why marketing departments have used social sharing throughout their, practices for years. And it's because it works. Reaching people through short digital content on social definitely translates. And then you're helping basically enable those people to send your messaging, create awareness for you, with 82% of job seekers using their phone to find a position, which relates back to the data I was mentioning earlier in regards to them looking for jobs at work. They're not going to be using the company computer to look for a job. More than likely, they're going to be searching for a cell phone. So making sure that your process is quick and easy for them to be able to find a position that way. So hopefully today's information was helpful, and look forward to helping answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. I think we've got a lot of questions. Thank you very much. I believe we have a lot of questions here on the right-hand side of your screen. So we will start from the top. So Mr. Sushant Jha was stating that we should have a proper job description and time to take the process for hiring. How much educational qualification matters, and how much job-specific experience in a particular job matters? We would like your feedback, ma'am.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, somewhere in the middle. It's, most written job descriptions tend to have too much information, quite frankly, and there tends to be a lot of repetition in the amount of information that they're communicating out to job seekers. If you think about it, really, you want to get their interest and get them in the door. So, anything that's like a knockout item, whether it's certifications or specific qualifications that you have to have the position, you definitely want to communicate those. But I would take a look. I know a lot of organizations are even kind of revamping the educational qualifications. I know that was specifically mentioned in the question, but that they are putting in their job descriptions or requiring to fill positions as it becomes more and more challenging to fill roles. So I would say kind of somewhere in the middle. You don't want to inundate them with too much information. You really you want to get their attention and interest in the position, but having kind of those overarching critical requirements mentioned in the video is important so that you get somebody that's a good fit.
So on the basis of that, you mentioned that videos should only be 30 to 60 seconds maximum. What do you think? What do you think are the 5 key things that should probably appear in the recruitment video?
Yeah, great question. So number one, tell about your value proposition as an organization. Always lead out with that. Why would they even want to think about working there? Because if you're not keeping them and getting their attention at the very beginning, and they're not going to see quote unquote what's in it for me, they're not going to even make it to the core elements of the job description. So start out with information that's going to be important to them. Why would they want to work there to begin with? Kind of selling them on the organization. Second, I would tell any, critical certifications or requirements about the position. Third, work environment. What are the expectations? Where are they expected to go? Is it virtual? Is it in person? What does that work environment look like? And then I would also mention anything in the process that might be challenging for the candidate. I know sometimes, obviously you want them to be interested in your position. And in some ways you're selling, obviously the job opening, but it is also good to overcome any challenges that might occur in process and kind of nip those in the bud right out of the gate. So if, for example, they have to lift a certain weight, or they're going to be required to be on their feet a certain amount of hours a day. Being transparent in those things can really help save the organization time and money in the long haul, because somebody that maybe isn't willing to do those things will, exit out during that part. So, and then concluding the video with information again, kind of more on the sales side, selling your company and who you are. That's kind of how you want to close out.
Fair enough. Okay, so Dr. Srivastava wrote here, in my view, multi-tech and multi-mode approach should be adopted for job recruitments, as it is challenging to recruit, retain good HR at this time. Another thing, outside HR agencies do not justify our needs exactly for what we want for our companies, so we must be involved in the process to decide any aspects. That tends to be true, actually. And leading on from that, I guess the question is that many agencies and outside recruitment companies tend to still put the candidate's experience last rather than the company that they're working for. So how do you go about educating the recruiters to place some importance on the experience of the candidate?
I think the biggest thing is enabling the recruiters by giving them enough tools. I mean, obviously, all HR departments, especially right now, are totally overwhelmed, and they've got way more requisitions than they could possibly handle themselves. And for a lot of organizations, they're understaffed, which I think the person was alluding to in their question. But I think giving them the tools, and that's why I talked quite a bit about automation. Allow allowing them, giving them simple things that they can do that takes so much of the manual onus off of them and allows them to focus on the things that are important, like the candidate engagement and, keeping it a nice, smooth process for the candidates. Plus, when you think about the fact that videos will improve candidates' learning and retention by 70%, you then end up with candidates that are much more qualified ending up through the pipeline. So it saves the recruiters having to weed through all those underqualified candidates. So it saves them time at the end of the day.
Yep, that's true. Okay, so we have another question from Mr. Jar, which was, how much time should the employer take to hire a top management, middle management in their core team?
I think the answer to that, I actually would just say that that's a lot less important than being transparent about the time you're taking. Whether I think that's largely dependent on the organization and kind of how many steps there are, how many people that they have to interview with, what that process looks like is going to be very different from organization to organization based on size and culture. So I'd say, the time it takes is way less important than being transparent about what that realistic time frame is for a candidate and letting them know out of the gate what that's going to look like. Obviously, you don't want to take a crazy amount of time because then you're going to lose people. So, you don't want to go over, I would say 6 weeks. I wouldn't go past that. But, being transparent about what that timeline looks like is, I would say, even more important than the timeline itself.
Okay. Fair enough. And what's our last question from Mr. Jar? According to you, ma'am, with regards to SEO, with due regards, would SEO would be one of the organic processes for recruitment. Am I correct?
Yes. So if you're using the right tools, like, if you're including video, for example, in your career site and things like that, then you're going to organically draw candidates in. I mean, obviously you don't want to totally, rest on your laurels, but it does give a huge opportunity to reach candidates that you wouldn't otherwise reach.
So if most third-party recruitment platforms aren't currently video enabled, are you actually seeing a rapid adoption of those platforms for video, or is there some hesitation by the traditional platforms to change?
Actually, most HR software is video enabled. Most of the applicant tracking systems and the CRM tools that organizations are utilizing will allow for some type of video, whether it's iframe, HTML code. So that has not been a challenge. That's actually something that they have working in their favor.
Oh, okay. What about the existing platforms like Seek and Monster.com and all of these, the aggregators of HR?
Yeah. Well, the social can really help kind of overcome a lot of the challenges and spend that companies might be seeing with those types of platforms. A lot of them will allow for at least an image or a link. So even if you include a link to a video, you're still better off from an SEO perspective than not having video at all. So and within every platform, you can at a minimum include a link. Obviously, if you've got that visual element, you are going to increase, the click-through rates even more. But at least the link does a lot for you too.
Yep. So do you think that most of them will adopt and start incorporating video, or why do you think there's a hesitation on those big sites to?
Well, I think a lot of
platforms.
Yeah, I think a lot of platforms were built on software that needs to be updated. It's probably antiquated at this point in time because when the boards were built, there was no consideration of, video per se. But now the whole industry has shifted so much. And obviously, we're trying to keep up with our marketing counterparts, and digital is the way to do it. So I think they're definitely going to have to shift.
Yeah. And what about the platform? So on the social side, if you're sharing video across social media? Is there a difference between sharing it on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, or is it roughly the same, the number of forwards and views that you get?
It's roughly the same. The biggest differentiator we see, like from platform to platform, is with the job type. So, for example, like an engineering job, what social site it performs on best is going to be different. Like that's probably going to be better on LinkedIn versus, a warehouse worker is probably going to be better on Facebook or Twitter. That's the biggest difference.
Yep, that makes sense. My LinkedIn as well is full of reasonably professional people as opposed to the medium-sized workforce. So, okay, do we have any questions? So, would a bilingual presentation in all cases be greater value to an organization?
If you're a global organization, yes, I would say yes.
What about in America, where you have a lot of Spanish speakers?
Yeah. It depends on the target audience. I mean, it's largely dependent on the target audience. If that's not necessarily who they're trying to target, then it wouldn't necessarily be a good converter. But if it is, then yes.
Okay. Next question is from Mrs. Sofeska, which was, what will consist of a video for participants that want to apply, like with short video CV? I think she means, I'll let you figure that out.
I think what she's saying is like on the candidate side, then how does it translate on the candidate side? Yep. What we see is like a lot of organizations will actually link their video jobs to a video screening tool, like a video interviewing platform, or candidates can submit a video CV if they want to. So we see organizations kind of enable that on the candidate side for consistency.
So what do you think candidates should be putting as their top things in their very short presentation? What are the top things candidates should be addressing?
I'm not sure about that. The one thing I would say is that all candidates should do like a quick Google of themselves and like see what's out there from a social perspective that's easily findable, because I know most people in the HR space are Googling the candidates. So.
Yes, that's true. I always tell my kids, don't put things on Facebook or Twitter that they might regret later.
Yes.
Yes, definitely true. Okay, does anyone else have any other questions? No? Okay, so with that, I think we will probably wind up. So Lindsay runs a company called DigiMe. Would you like to tell us a bit about your business?
Yeah, so we build a globally patented video player that allows for employers globally to utilize technology and video to translate their message into video in like 48 hours or less. So it's very painless. We've got a full scale production team, but we've built totally automated products that enable organizations to integrate with like their applicant tracking system. And then we have a live dashboard that allows them to track the candidate behavior. So we, our whole end game is enabling employers to kind of take the power back of their recruiting message, and to, instead of sending candidates to outside sources like job boards, being able to pull them in to you and, using digital technology to do that. So.
Right. Excellent. All right. Well, so what we will do is we will send a follow-up to all of our attendees with a copy of a recording of this session today, as well as Ms. Danton's contact details. And I think if no one else has any other questions, I think we could probably end today's session. I really thank you for your time, Lindsay. It's been great. Fantastic insights. And I will get a follow-up email to everyone first thing Monday because, again, my colleague is not here. Everyone's gotten sick with COVID, but they should be back by Monday. So the person responsible will send the video recording link to everyone as well as Lindsay's direct contact details and more about her company.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, everyone, as well. Bye.